Do you need to be a massage therapist to be able to use myofascial release techniques? No way. In this video, I'm going to give you the exact tools and steps that you can use to properly release muscle tension or fascia, as well as the common mistakes that I see a lot of people making or coaches making. But before I dive into that, just a quick reminder, hit our subscribe button for this channel to see new movement-related content every single week. Now, as a massage practitioner and movement specialist, more often than not, I can produce the same myofascial release results without having to put my hands on somebody, which is an awesome skill set to have as a personal trainer and as a virtual trainer in this post-COVID world. Which, if you want to actually dive deeper into that whole concept, check out this video I made on how to coach restoration virtually. It's a sweet setup. Now, let me get into this one. Why would someone need myofascial release? Or what does that term actually really mean? Well, myo means muscle. Fascia is essentially this coating, this sheath around muscles that essentially makes its shape. It's the container at which the muscle lives in. It shapes the direction at which the muscles actually lengthen or strengthen. I want you to think of it like this. Think about like a sausage, right? Think about the casing of that sausage is the fascia or the myofascial part of what we're talking about. The meat inside that sausage is essentially the muscle. So without that casing, what do you have? Well, you kind of have just ground meat, right? You kind of have just this, again, you have function, but you don't have form. But the fascia is the one that limits our range of motion. Again, it's interwoven within every single fiber in our body, especially muscle fibers. So therefore, when we get tight, our myofascial, needs to get released, needs to get broken up, because we want more range of motion. We want more function within the body's capacity to move. And if we can't do that, well, then we're limited in our principle of movement, in our performance, in our range of motion. So think of it like this. If we don't release fascia, then it's harder to stretch that fascia. If we don't stretch that fascia, it's harder to load and explode that fascia. And some fascia or some myofascial releasing needs to be done because the fascia is so bound down, it's almost stuck. It's almost like glued together, or it's so dehydrated. And that's what you can see, like fascia isn't this plastic object, it's very fluid. If it reduces the fluidity, it reduces its hydration. So what you're essentially doing, think about this sponge that's on your countertop, and then you go on a 1-week vacation. You come back, and what does that sponge now look like? Well, it's pretty dried up. It's actually misshaped. It's probably in some sort of concave or convex positioning, right? It's hard. You try to bend it, it doesn't really bend. Okay, now take a little bit of physicality, squeezing, pushing, and hydration. What does that sponge do? Pops. It expands. Now, what does that sponge now do in terms of function? It bends, it twists, it folds, and when you release that fold, what happens? Pop, it pops back to its original shape. It's very fluid. It's very supple in a sense, right? That's healthy myofascia. And that's what we want. So that's what it means. What tools, though, can we use to facilitate myofascial release? Well, let's just take the physical self out of it. Let's take a massage practitioner's elbow, foot, knee, hand, whatever the case is, out of the equation, and look at this little pile behind me here, or to the side of me. What we're looking at here is we're looking at a lot of equipment. We have the good old standard foam roller, right? When I first started in the facility, they were like 3 feet long, made of this real soft kind of foam that broke down pretty easily, and they were white. Well, those are kind of a thing of the past now because we're starting to go something a little bit more kind of solid, so a foam roller would work. Then we have a little bit more of a kind of surgical dialed-in effect with a foam ball, right? A little bit more pointed in a sense, so we can get into more places. Think of this more like an elbow versus a forearm would be in terms of application, right? It's much more broad surface, much more pointed surface if you were a massage practitioner in comparison. Then you can get real down to the nitty-gritty with like a roller. This can go on someone's foot or even into smaller parts of the body, even using that ball to get into someone's like hip flexor. Then you got the good old-fashioned, let's just go to a sporting goods store and get a lacrosse ball. always works really well, or a tennis ball or a golf ball. And then you get some more of these like Theracane type of setups where you can get kind of in tight spots and places where you can kind of get into some tight-knit spots. And then you start to throw some tech onto it. Oh, the good old-fashioned vibrating foam roller or vibrating foam ball. What does the vibration do? Well, what does the vibration do to anything in a construction site, right? Like a jackhammer, right? It breaks things up faster. So it allows the movement to be more specifically focused on what you're going for. If I want to hydrate something and I want to kind of move fluid in and out, if I put a vibration on it, it's going to facilitate more fluid transfer. It's also going to neuromuscularly relax somebody as well. We'll talk about that more later in the video. And then you get to the percussion guns. And now we can get to some real detail, changing the heads out, really applying some good force to places just to speed things up. But let's not forget that anything works. A football could work. A medicine ball can work. The edge of your counter could work at home, right? It doesn't take fancy tools, but it does take fancy thought. And again, I'm going to get into that very, very soon. So just think about this one, right? You want anything to facilitate a pressure change in our fascia. So what should people do to avoid doing foam rolling the wrong way? What mistakes are made frequently? Well, frequently made mistakes are using the foam roller as an example to actually roll. Rolling is not something that we should do when we're trying to do myofascial release. If you want to just pump some blood through the body, some fluids through the body, kind of a post-workout or pre-workout kind of setup, no problem. That's not a bad technique whatsoever. But if you're trying to focus, then rolling or moving at a kind of very dynamic, I would say, accelerated pace is not something that I recommend doing at all. Why? It hurts. It hurts. And you're not going to do something that hurts. And again, I'll dive into that a little bit deeper. The next thing that people should not do is they should not just grab a tool and drive into the body with as much force as they possibly can. More force is not better. It is not faster. A deep tissue massage does not mean that they are driving as hard as they can into the person's tissue, so they're just squinting and fighting. And here's the key principle behind it. The more I force something that has its own conscience, its own way of kind of dealing with life, the more it's probably going to force back. Meaning, if I jump into water at a high rate of velocity, it's going to hurt a lot more than if I go in slow. All right, so it works with physics. What about with our own mentality and our own bodily filled water system, right? Our body's filled with water. So I have to go slow, meaning not push too hard, meaning go lighter. And again, I'll dive into that in our steps of actually how I want you to do it. So those are two big mistakes. People are rolling and people are pushing too hard. And that because it's painful. And therefore, not only will the physics of it not work very well, but the mentality of it won't work as well. So now that you know more about what not to do, I'm going to give you the exact steps that you can follow every single time to foam roll to help release tension. But first, drop a line in the comments below if you think about certain areas that we should make videos on how to actually foam roll, stretch, and strengthen. We'd love to hear from it and make content directly towards you. Now, here's what I want you to do. Again, any tool that you use, let's just grab the old-fashioned foam roller, and I'm going to go after, let's go after my calves, right? I can talk to you, look at you, kind of dial this in a little bit more so you can see it. So what I want to do is I want to put my muscle onto the object, whatever it is. And from there, I want to put the appropriate amount of pressure to make my muscle essentially say, that's uncomfortably comfortable. So it's how much weight I push into it. It's how much pressure I put into it. If you're going to go on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 be like, stop, that is way too much pressure. I'm literally like biting my teeth together. That's too much. That's 10. Go to about a 6. 5.5, 6.5, 7, right? Okay, but go to comfortably uncomfortable. meaning the tissue is saying, I'm being forced to change, but I can manage the change. Now, if you can use the weight of your own limb on your calf, for example, to do that, great, go for it. If you need to add more weight, you can do that. If that's too much, you got to think about it. Maybe the gravitational weight of your own leg is not enough. Maybe you should take it off of gravity, use a different tool that you can maybe physically push into it to make it more appropriate, right? The amount of positioning that you do is going to be the most important about how to facilitate the most amount of pressure. Again, you may not be able to do that on the ground. It's too much. That's okay. Go against a wall and pin it against a wall and do the same thing. And I got my foam ball just right behind me there. The positioning is probably the most important way to think about applying the amount of pressure that is, well, uncomfortably comfortable. We want the muscle, the fascia, to essentially warp around the tool. We don't want to force it into it. So start light and start slow. The last point about the amount of pressure that I want you to use is thinking about it also from a start of don't just put the foam roller somewhere. Maybe roll the whole part of the muscle first. Thinking about the lateral aspects, the posterior aspects, or the medial aspects, and then say, okay, where was the worst spot? Ooh, start there. Versus going to the first spot and basically missing out on what would be a better session, a better, more focused outcome, meaning getting value for your time. Okay, let's go back to it again. So now you found a comfortably uncomfortable spot. You're at that level where you can hold there and allow that muscle to start to essentially release. Now, I'm saying the word muscle, I really mean fascia, but just to keep it simple. From that point, I'm going to just wait. I'm just going to wait. I'm going to do nothing in the beginning. Once I start to feel that muscle go from a 6, let's say, to a 5, I can actually feel it. I can actually feel it releasing. Breathing, allowing my body to get into a state of just relaxation, basically. But once I start to feel that release, I can maybe present it to go a little faster. I can maybe get a little bit of foot action, maybe a little bit of knee action. I like to move a joint below or a joint above, just a little bit. I'm not rolling, but I am shifting the muscle, so I'm allowing it to basically floss itself to keep it very, very simple. But I'm getting some basic movement patterns through the muscle. Whatever you want to do, remember you have 3 planes of motion to choose from. I can go toe, left, right. I can spin the toe. Long story short, but I don't want it to peak the uncomfortable. If I move my calf and it shoots to an 8, that's not going to help you out. That's going to slow you down, in my opinion. It's going to slow you down because you're not in that relaxed state anymore. You're fighting back, and a fascial muscle that fights back is not going to give you the results that you want. Remember, you're going to spend more time doing it. I don't want you to spend much more time doing this. I want you to be doing this very efficiently. So with that being said, there you go, a little bit of motion pattern. Once it gets to about a 2, right, not a 0, 2 is good enough, you are going to have 2 options. You can either go deeper and push harder and put more weight on that muscle, because now that kind of top layer of fascia has now kind of been it's been hydrated basically. Now you can go deeper. And what you, in the beginning, would have been like a 10, now is just a 6. You got to think, remember, fascia and muscle fibers are like a spaghetti bundle, right? There's fiber within fiber within fiber within fiber. Don't just get the outside layer, get as deep as you possibly can to get as much effect on the fascia, because it's not just on the outer layer, right? It's layer upon layer upon layer. You want to go as deep as you possibly can with the time that you have available to you. So then you get to the next layer, or you can just go to a new spot and just roll to a higher level or a lower level or an inside level or an outside level. A quick point on this one, not to get too detailed, but if you can't achieve a 6 out of 10, if it jumps way up to a 7, 8, 9, then don't go directly on the muscle. Just kind of nudge against it. Go a little off to the side. Don't go directly on ground zero. It's another good strategy to be able to get through something that's maybe tough to resist. Now, quick question. If that muscle is not releasing, if you're on your side rib cage and you're like, this is the worst, I can't go to the wall, I got to be here, and it's just not releasing. If in 90 seconds that muscle does not start to release, then you're pushing too hard. You're pushing too hard. Back, even if you don't think you are, you're pushing too hard. Back off to a 5, whatever the case is, right? Back off a little bit more and start the clock again. And if it's still not missing, back off to a 4. Honestly, I have not had a single athlete client that strategy has not worked for. Meaning you may be pushing too hard. And when you're doing myofascial release, we tend to push too hard because we want to go fast. So that's my quick little process on how to do this and really make this essentially almost bulletproof to get great deep effect without the need to hire a massage therapist. Now, I'm not saying don't do that, right? I'm not saying don't do that, but if you need a very affordable way to do deep tissue, soft tissue work at home, before a workout, after a workout, and don't have the means, time-wise or budget-wise, to do it, phenomenal resources that these things will last your lifetime. They're really going to last forever in a sense. So it's really thinking about that one. How do you do it appropriately? What's a good strategy to go through that? And what's a process you can always bank on and go back on to see, like, hey, wait a minute, am I doing this right? Am I doing this appropriately? And that's the cool part about this. You can go deeper and deeper and deeper in time and allow your body day after day after day to get more and more of this effect of good myofascial tension and balance. And now if you want to dive deeper and learn more about how to program these types of techniques into your training sessions to help your clients find more efficient movement patterns, head to the description below to learn more about the Multidimensional Movement Program Mentorship. This is a deep dive. It's a great opportunity to join a mentorship of trainers throughout the country and how we can collectively solve our problems that we're dealing with our clients in a way that it's principle-based thinking. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And we love to put out new content every single week. So thanks for hanging in there. Appreciate you. See you next time. Cheers.